So as of last night, the new Marvel series WandaVision has concluded, and like the 99.9% majority, I had my own file of theories as to where the show was going to be headed once it started. And like the 99.9% majority, those theories were either a little off or they were way off. And at first, I was a little disappointed, like all the cool shit I was conjuring up in my head would have been amazing to see on screen, and to see it not necessarily go a more basic route, but be a bit less exciting than what people were hoping was a little bit of a letdown. But then I started thinking about the idea of the expectations that fans build in their head, and how sometimes that can really hurt the viewing experience, and it isn't at all the creators' fault, except in this case, maybe some of the blame is on the creators. This is your huge spoiler warning because I will indeed be spoiling the living shit out of WandaVision. So WandaVision picks up 3 weeks after the events of Endgame, and the first episode shows our two heroes in a 50s-style sitcom, where it remains to be this way throughout the whole episode, with only a little hint that something is a little funky. Episode 2, we go into the 60s with a little more funkiness, and the third episode, the 70s, with an ending that basically is telling you something is super funky. Obviously, just based on the trailers, the fan theories were going absolutely nuts. Questions being thrown around like, why sitcoms? Is Vision alive? Who's behind everything? Theories were ranging from Mephisto being a key player to Ultron showing up, and man, these theories were wild. So you can imagine that when not a single one of these theories turned out to be true, people were a little upset. But who's really to blame here? It can't be the writers, because they already had the whole thing planned out. It was the audience that came up with their own ideas of how the show was going to end, and obviously when it's not what they want, they're going to be a little pissed. Except this show kinda hinged on these theories. The first couple episodes were borderline begging for theories to be thrown out, and there were cases where it seemed the show was baiting people into creating bigger and grander thoughts. We had that interview with Elizabeth Olsen about the show having a Luke Skywalker level cameo in the series, and Paul Bettany saying he was able to perform with an actor he has always wanted to work with.
I think people will be really excited. I've always wanted to work this one. It seems pretty.
Spoiler alert, there was no Luke Skywalker level cameo, and Paul Bettany's big role actor he was able to act alongside with was, well, himself. Now, haha, Paul Bettany, very funny, I get the joke, but I have a feeling you know what you were doing. No, actually, I'm gonna go ahead and say I'm 100% positive you knew what you were doing. You sick fuck. This is just a handful of the kind of baiting that was going on throughout each episode, and I knew it was going to become a problem once episode 4 hit, where it started to focus on the S.W.O.R.D. agents. We started getting answers to some questions, and lo and behold, people weren't happy with the answers because they more than likely had a much bigger, or maybe in some cases more interesting answer they came up with. Things really started to hit the fan when Evan Peters showed up as Quicksilver. Oh my lord, the explosion. And then it turned out to just be Ralph. This random ass dude Agnes chills with, like, what?
Ralph Boner?
Boner.
Why cast Evan Peters as Quicksilver if it's not going to have any remote tie-in to X-Men Quicksilver? The whole reason we haven't gotten to see any of the MCU Netflix characters is because Kevin Feige feared it would confuse the audience too much. But casting an actor playing the same character from a different timeline who is revealed to not even be that character isn't off the table of confusion? It doesn't make a lot of sense, and this is where I believe the fault landed in the showrunner's hands. I get that you want to keep the mystery going to keep people watching, but you're also damaging your show when you play them up like this and then don't have that ending be as satisfying. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely adored the show, but I can understand where people are coming from when they say it didn't end up leaving them satisfied once the show ended. However, there are many cases where it's more the audience's fault. In Star Wars, for example, the theories were going absolutely crazy after The Force Awakens about who Snoke is, Rey's heritage, and all the other questions that fans started answering for themselves, and when the story started going into a direction they didn't envision being the right way to go, they called them bad movies. Now, I'm probably going to get slammed, but out of the sequel trilogy of Star Wars, I prefer The Last Jedi over the rest, because that movie at least did things differently. It felt the most out of the box when it came to Star Wars movies. I was feeling this way about WandaVision because it started out as a very different story than we've ever seen before, and around the halfway point it started to fall back into that classic MCU formula we all either love or we hate. But what people need to also understand was that WandaVision was a story about Scarlet Witch, and that was it. Which is something we all should have assumed based on how the episodes started turning out. Which Scarlet Witch story is a good thing. We needed this sort of 6-hour story to really flesh her out if she was going to start playing a much bigger role in these movies. I'm sure that once fans have time to settle and sit with the show, they will start to have a much bigger appreciation for what it had offered. Especially if Spider-Man 3 and Doctor Strange go in the direction we think it's going, but then again, we shouldn't hold out too much hope for these big giant theories, just in case they don't happen. We should take these next movies as they are, and instead of basing them off of our own wants, we should base it off of what it gives us.